What's going on, everybody? It's me, Ryan Monson, the host of the Classic Buffalo podcast, the mental health podcast. We interview people. We talk about stuff with them. We say, hey, what's your story? And then they share. We have about an hour and a half conversation about life. And you're here for it, hopefully. If not, you're like, well, what's going on? Well, I thought this was the Joe Rogan podcast. Whoopsies. Yeah, back out real quick. This is the Classic Buffalo podcast, and we're here this week for another episode. Quick sidebar before we get started. Tomorrow night, Tuesday, 7 p.m. EST, Eastern, we are starting our first ever Discord server kind of video audio call. I'm super pumped because I'm doing this in an effort to kind of promote this this need for community and support. And so feel free to come, share your thoughts, what's going on in your life, get positive feedback. You know, like I'm super passionate about what I love to be eventually a physical community, but right now is virtual. And it's going to be our first meeting, so I'd love to have you. If you want the Discord link, please feel free to hit me up on Instagram at Classic Buffalo, and I'll throw it over to you. Would love to see you come out and kind of be yourself, anonymous, or be, hey, my name's John Smith, or I'm just John, or make up a name. Doesn't matter. Just come as you are, share something that's going on, or just show up and maybe even support some people. So it's going to be a really good time, and I'm personally pumped to just see how it goes and to start this thing that I'm honestly really passionate about. So anyway, today with the actual podcast, this was recorded right before Corona hit. A really solid guy who knows a lot of other people who have been on the podcast in the past. He goes by Recovery Ray. He runs the recovery room, has a couple, I think, spots throughout Indianapolis, and he'll talk about that, but does some really cool things in the fitness game, has some really like sciencey ways that, you know, he tackles mindfulness and tackles recovery. And we talk a little bit about his podcast and his journey and sharing his story, and how, you know, through his podcast, he's kind of shared his tidbits and tricks and where he was at, you know, after he went through something, where he was at a year ago, you know, and looking back. And yeah, he's just a really solid guy, and he's doing a lot of really cool things in the fitness and in the life game that we're all playing. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Recovery Ray. Joining me for the first episode in the new studio is Recovery Ray. What's up, dude?
How's it going, man?
Welcome, man. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
First one's free. I'm just kidding. No. You are like a part owner / you work in a recovery room, which is like the most like high-tech fitness stuff I've ever seen. Like with like, don't you guys like have cryo chambers or something like that?
We sure do. We have whole body cryotherapy.
Oh, that's so cool. What is cryotherapy?
So cryotherapy uses cold temperatures to reduce inflammation throughout the body.
Okay.
And once you step out of the chamber, it increases blood flow throughout your body. So it increases circulation. Whoa. Which is normally the best way to relieve soreness, is reducing inflammation and increasing circulation. Okay. Yep.
So is that like, what's different than like icing and then like heat? Or is that essentially you're going so cold that by going back to normal temperatures, it's the equivalent of heat? Or is that just a totally different thing?
So yeah, icing is normally better if you're experiencing pain.
Okay.
Or if you have an acute injury, right?
Yeah.
Heat normally helps to relieve tension in the muscle. So there are times where you do both. We actually have a service called Game Ready that uses contrast. It goes like 1 minute cold to 1 minute hot. Ooh. That contrast helps to increase blood flow to wherever you're wearing the wrap. Wow. So there is times for hot and cold, but most times you're either picking one or the other. When you come in.
Man, what's the typical person look like that comes in to use, like, because that's not the only thing you do. Like you do other, well, first of all, do like services. What do you guys like do?
Yep, so we have 7 services total.
Okay.
We have whole body cryotherapy, which is what I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Localized cryotherapy, which is just like icing.
Okay.
We have Normatec, which uses air compression to help increase circulation to the legs, hips, or arms. And then we have Game Ready, which is what I mentioned before, the hot and cold contrast.
Right.
We also have flow pods. Yeah,
Whoa,
those are very interesting. You are floating in about 10 inches of water. There's 900 pounds of Epsom salt inside. And it is a complete sensory deprivation experience. The magnesium from the salt actually pulls all of the cortisol out of our system, which is the stress hormone. So we're not only more relaxed mentally, but our muscles are relaxed as well.
Oh my God. Wow, science. I just got science really hard. Man, I've always wanted to do a sensory deprivation tank. Like, what's the typical experience in that? Like, is it something you have to do multiple times, or it could be good, like, just to do one time?
I will say, after the first time I did it, I came out a different person.
Dang.
It was amazing because I had never experienced life without feeling my body before. Dang. So you're weightless. So it's a really interesting experience. I personally practice meditation, so it was a space for me to say I can do whatever I want with my mind. I can meditate. I can just be silent.
Yeah.
And it was really cool the day I realized that I don't normally give myself like chunks of time where I'm not required to do anything. And that is like a 45-minute stretch of time where you are, all that you were supposed to do is be present in that moment with yourself, which is really cool.
I want to get into how you got to where you're at today. Because everybody has a story, right? That's why that's why we're on here. But what I want to try and do for just a first time is we're going to do like kind of like the first 5, if you'll call it. Usually it's the final 5, but just to get to know you as a person, just in general. So number 1, what is the conspiracy theory that you actually believe?
That we've never been to the moon.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Why?
I guess I haven't really seen like actual facts on it. Like people say things, they have videos and things that we can watch, but I don't know if it's real because it came from a long time ago.
Yeah.
So it's been something that I'm okay with, the fact that we either did or didn't. Like either way, I'm cool, right? Like my life doesn't change too much.
Yeah.
So that's the one that comes to mind when I think of a conspiracy that may not have, or that may actually be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, like, what's the advantage to, like, faking that? I've seen, like, videos of recent where they do, like, now from NASA, or, like, people in the space station, and they're, like, floating around, and, like, if you pause this right here, you can see why, and I'm like, wires? I'm like, I don't know. But, like, I could, it's probably, like, some way, if that was the case, there's a big reason why or something.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't normally spend too much time thinking about conspiracies.
Yeah, right.
But that was just the first one that came to mind. So who knows?
Yeah.
It might not be real.
Right. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Does pineapple belong? So pizza is my favorite food.
Okay.
And I personally like Hawaiian pizza. So I would have to say that if that's something that you like, then yes. If not, don't do it. Just don't put it on there, because I would rather someone enjoy pizza than to have something on there that they don't feel like belongs.
How healthy on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being healthy, is pizza?
It depends on where you get it from.
Okay.
If you're making your own pizza at home, you can make a healthy version of pizza by using like cauliflower crust, or back in the day, actually, I used to make pizza with the crust being like ground chicken. So it was just straight protein, which is actually pretty cool.
What?
So there are options to make it healthier, but on average, it's not very healthy.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
What should you like not have a lot of or have on a pizza?
Personally, I try not to eat too much pork in general.
Okay.
So I would say a whole lot of processed meats. I think the least amount of processed meats you put on there, the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meats. All right. Who plays you in a movie about yourself?
Well, based on the actors that I like, I would definitely have to say Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
Either Michael B. Jordan or myself, one of the two. I'll be okay with playing myself. I think I would do a pretty good job.
If you could live in any decade and be as old as you are now, or I guess you could be older, whatever you want, but you get to live in any decade.
I would honestly say right now, primarily because we've progressively evolved. So based on what I know, the ease at which I'm able to find information would go down. Like there's a lot of things that are very convenient today that wouldn't be convenient in these other times. if I ever were to go back in time, it would be like, oh yeah, it would be cool to know a little bit more than everyone around here and maybe start a business or create an industry and be that it grows over time. But when it comes to just day-to-day life, we are living in a time that is absolutely amazing. So I'm grateful for what I have right now.
Yeah. That's a good answer. If you were trapped on a desert island and you had the option to be alone or with the only other person would be your worst enemy, which one would you choose?
I would definitely pick being with my worst enemy. It's funny because I don't know if I have one.
Right.
But if I did, I don't see why I wouldn't want to be with them because it would be something new every day. It would be some sort of contrasting personality there that would, I personally feel like I learn from adversity. I see obstacles as a stepping stone. So it would be something that I would learn to appreciate that person over time, which might take longer because it's my worst enemy, but it would be something for me to do every day.
Yeah, I just feel like you'd just go crazy. Like you're the Wilson, you get a volleyball, put a face on it. But there's just that thought of like, what if that person, the reason why there's like your worst enemy is just one misunderstanding that would take like a week to work out, and then you're either friends or you're just cordial, and then now you have another person to figure out how do we get out of this
Exactly,
island,
yeah, two brains are better than one, so yeah.
That's good. Sweet. Well, you made it through the first round of
I like those are nice.
So let's go day one. You've emerged out of the womb. Where are you at?
Yeah, so I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Wow, first New Mexico person.
Yeah, so shortly after, though, my parents moved from New Mexico to South Bend, Indiana. So I grew up in South Bend.
Yeah.
Mom and dad are both in the household. When I was younger, I had older siblings that were in high school that were still in the household.
Okay.
Let's see. By the time I was probably like 4 or 5, though, they were out of the house. They were in college. I'm the youngest of 6.
Okay.
Youngest of 6. So 4 of them are significantly older. So I didn't grow up with them, but I did have one older brother that he's only 2.5 years older. So we grew up together.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much just played basketball all the time. Went to church all the time. My parents.
Have you always been tall?
No. I started out high school. I was about 5'5", 120 pounds.
Yeah.
So I was little. It took some time for me to grow. I was a late bloomer, so I didn't grow till college.
Yeah.
But yeah, so spent most of my time in church or playing basketball, and I enjoyed learning. So I was into school. I enjoyed going. I enjoyed everything that came along with that too. So I spent most of my time with family and learning stuff.
Yeah. Would you change how you were raised?
No, not at all. I think without how I was raised, I wouldn't be who I am today. So even though there were some things that I look back to and I'm like, okay, I'll probably do that different when I have a child. I'm still grateful for experiencing them, for sure.
What's like one of your most treasured memories from growing up?
Yeah, so growing up, my parents did a good job of consistently doing things as a family. So we would meet at my parents' house like Sunday evenings after church, and we would play board games, and we would just be together.
Right.
And I think that's something that gets lost sometimes, especially in the day and age that we're in now. But it's something that I appreciated a lot because I was consistently around family who I now realize I can learn a lot from. So my perspective has changed a little bit over time, but I think that was a great way to set the foundation for who I am today.
High school, college age, like did you go to college? What were you considering? Like that kind of stuff. Did basketball play any role in that?
So basketball didn't really play a role.
Okay.
I don't think I was very good in high school, primarily because I struggled with a lot of fear and anxiety. And when it came to basketball, I was afraid of, probably a lot of things. But I never thought I was good enough. Because it was the case, I didn't play in college. I played intramurals, I played for fun, but I didn't play competitively. Went to IU though.
Okay.
Got a degree in kinesiology. I love the human body. I wanted to be a physical therapist, but I didn't want to go to school any longer than what I had to.
Yeah.
So I left with the degree in kinesiology and a health fitness specialist minor, and I started personal training right out of college.
Yeah, when did you know you wanted to get into fitness?
So it was junior year, first semester. I took a personal fitness class, and I was just intrigued by the way that I could take where I currently was, and I could get an idea of where I wanted to be, and I could create a plan to get me from point A to point B. So after that first semester, the second semester, I put myself through an 85-day workout program that I personally created, and I literally completely transformed my body in the span of 85 days.
How did it transform?
So I put on a whole lot of muscle, a whole lot of muscle. That was pretty much it. It was muscle, and then mentally it was confidence, which I didn't know what it felt like until I got it, which I definitely appreciate now.
Yeah. What would be like one of your tips for someone who's trying to get into like fitness?
Understand why you want to do it. I think that's going to be important, primarily because it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's simple, but it's not easy because you have to break yourself down to build yourself back up. So if you understand why and you keep that at the forefront of your mind throughout that journey, you're a lot more likely to stay consistent and to stay disciplined and ultimately reach whatever goal you set for yourself.
Ultimately, what you just said that stuck out was the why. Like, what is your why? Because, an external force could motivate you. It could be money, it could be whatever, but like whatever, if you don't find that thing that intrinsically motivates you, because I'm sure there's different things that motivate, people in different ways. Like not everybody responds to being really hard on them or really soft on them. Like everybody needs their different ways. My question to you would be like, what's your why?
Yeah, so my why...
if you know it. You don't have to know it yet.
Yeah, and it's something that's continuing to evolve. I think it changes little by little over time.
Yeah.
It comes from me learning how easily life can be taken away. I had a blood clot in my lung January of 2017.
Wow.
From that experience, I gained a new appreciation for life, and I understood that it would be up to me to be mindful of how I felt and why, and to take care of myself in order for me to be here for an extended period of time, in order for me to have a family, in order for me to do anything, I had to be healthy. So through that journey, I became more self-aware. I took into account how I was feeling mentally, physically, emotionally, and I've gotten to a place where my ultimate why is to help show other people that there are options. Regardless of what they're experiencing, they don't have to be miserable in their lives. There are options to maintain peace and to have joy and to be happy, regardless of what they're experiencing. And I've found personally that comes from maintaining a present perspective on life.
Yeah.
So I use that on a daily basis as best I can, maintain a present perspective and put that compassion that I have for myself into anything that I do.
Talk about the blood clot situation.
Yeah.
Like, how did you find out you had one?
So I had no idea. I thought I was experiencing back spasms just from lifting a little too heavy.
Yeah.
But it hurt. It was painful. I couldn't inhale without just having excruciating pain in my back. So it was along the right-hand side. And it was a whole day. I went to work, kind of treated it like it was, like I said before, like it was back spasms. Tried to roll out, try to just push through it. I am not the guy who is going to the doctor as soon as I feel something that feels a little off. I'm like, I'll be fine. I'll breathe through it. So I told my boss during that day, I was like, hey, if I don't feel better tomorrow, I'm just going to go to the doctor, get some muscle relaxers, and come back to work. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
I woke up the next morning. I really didn't sleep because it was just so painful. I couldn't lay flat. which was also interesting. Yeah, that's definitely a red flag. If you can't lay flat, probably go see someone about that.
Okay.
But next morning, I was brushing my teeth, getting ready to go to our doctor, and I coughed up blood and was like, this is probably something a little more serious than back spasms. So went to the ER. They ended up finding it. They caught it, and I was fine. I had to take blood thinners for a year, just to help manage the consistency of my blood because it seemed to be a little too thick. And like I said, I started my personal self-awareness journey, and I've just been consistently focusing on that ever since.
Is that kind of like, I mean, because you were like a personal trainer at this point.
Correct.
Still.
Yep.
Like, did you kind of, because you had mentioned to me earlier that you were doing more like, you said something about like, was it mindset training or like kind of mental coaching? And
correct.
Like, is that kind of when did you start that? Was that around the same time or before? Or?
So I didn't know anything about self-awareness specifically. I really didn't think about changing my mindset. All I knew was physical. That was what I was used to. So initially, all I did was focus on how I felt physically and ultimately create a plan for myself to get myself back to where I wanted to be physically.
Yeah.
In doing that, started to journal more. I was just recording and writing things down, and over time, it evolved from me being aware of where I was physically to then focusing more on where I was mentally and emotionally, because I realized that those two areas played a greater role in what I was actually feeling than where I was physically.
Yeah.
Where I was physically was a result of where I was mentally and emotionally. So once I learned that, then I just dove deep and started practicing meditation, reading books, understanding more about the human mind, how we feel things, why we feel things, going deep with my parents. So just learning more about where I came from. Yeah, and it's brought me to where I am today.
And you did the work.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah.
And so that's been like the last 3 years where things kind of have changed now a little bit.
For sure.
You know, when you look back at pre-2017, Ray, like how do you view that person?
Yeah, so I definitely used to judge him, for sure. I mean, I'm the same person. I'm just more aware of things. So, I did the best with what I had, which is what we all normally do. And so as I continued to increase my awareness of things, my life changed. Now, it's one thing to be aware of something and not take action on it, which I lived a life doing that for a while too.
Right.
But I knew what I knew. I did the best with what I had. So I'm grateful that I'm still here, because without that person, I wouldn't have probably made it through what I've been going through.
Yeah. Has there been kind of like any cool story that comes to mind when you think of, man, this is why I do what I do?
Honestly, my parents. Being able to go back to before the blood clot and everything happened, and knowing where our relationship was,
right,
and knowing how active they were with being more aware of how they felt and practicing self-care habits and things like that, that was non-existent. And so the fact that I was able to make changes in my life and then use the knowledge that I had to give back to them. They have been married for about 30 years now.
Okay.
And
congrats.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can ask them where they feel like their relationship is and how they feel about it, and they will probably say that they feel the best right now about it. And it's just because of, honestly, just them observing the things that I chose to do in my life, me having conversations that may not have been easy in the moment, but we got through them, that has shown them that they have options. Even within their older age, they have options, and I'm just grateful that I've been here to be a resource for them. Yeah.
What advice would you give to Ray Jr.? You know, like to the guy who sees what you're doing, like, I want to do that, or I want to go to school for fitness, or I want to become a trainer, or I want to just, become a life coach, something like that. What advice would you give to somebody who's thinking of getting into the industry that you're in?
Similar answer to what I mentioned before. Definitely understand why you want to do it. Yeah. Because is what's going to maintain you throughout it. I would also say, now these are for me, keeping life as simple as possible has been very valuable.
Okay.
So I would tell them just to keep it simple. I've learned that I can't tell people things because hearing it is different than showing it. I can show someone how to do something a lot more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah.
So if it's ever given advice, I can tell you what I know, and I know keeping it simple is definitely what has worked for me. But I had to learn that by overcomplicating things and then looking back and reflecting on it and saying, whoa, it did not have to be that difficult.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and make adjustments for the next time. So I would say keep it simple, and then a habit that they could practice to do that, I would say is reflecting consistently. So looking back on what you were putting your time and energy into as it pertains to whatever goal you have, and think about it. Think about what went well, think about what didn't go well, and come up with ways to consistently be progressing as you move towards your goal.
What has been your experience, either personally or in your circles of influence, with mental health?
As I mentioned before, I believe I mentioned this before, I struggled a lot with fear and anxiety.
How would you describe anxiety to somebody?
Nervousness. Sometimes I experience like a shivering feeling. It's like a cold. Sometimes it's like stuttering in my mind, feeling like you should or have to say something, but you can't get it out. It's kind of like that's stuck. It's like you're stuck.
Yeah.
Being aware of where I was mentally and the habits that I practice for my mental health has completely given me the tools that I would need to be able to maintain a present perspective. And if I ever do experience things that normally trigger the fear or anxiety, I have the tools that I can use to, I normally say breathe through it, but literally breathe through it. And to be present with it and just to look at it and not allow it to stop me from taking action on what I feel in the moment.
What's the best thing someone can do during a panic attack?
Honestly, breathing. If you can take deep breaths, if you can slow down a little bit, that will normally, or at least reduce the physiological response that you're having to that fear.
Right.
So the increase in blood pressure, which normally is what kind of causes the increased breathing. So I would say breathing is the best way to, and if you are able to level that part of it out, then normally you're more likely to be able to quiet your mind a little bit better too. So breathing, definitely I would say start there, and then
journaling seemed to have worked for you.
Oh man, yeah, journaling was great too. Just being able to get what was in your mind out was a great way to look at it from a different perspective. So that helps. But in those moments, I would say breathing.
When shit hits the fan, what do you do for other people that you seem to notice works well?
I listen. I ask questions that pretty much guide people to share what they're feeling and how they're feeling in that moment. And with listening and questioning, I'm able to help them maintain a present perspective, even if it's not the best perspective in that moment, right? It could still be creating those feelings of anxiety in that moment, but with maintaining a present perspective, I've learned that that's the best place to be in order to move through and past those feelings. So just helping them stay present.
There's something I saw in your story before I came here, and it was like, how do you deal with success?
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain how you handle success is important and why?
I have a desire to understand ways that I can improve and improve those things the next time I try something. And that's normally what first comes to mind after I succeed. It's like, success, cool. Where's the feedback? Where can I get it? And how can I improve? And what I've learned is that I miss out on precious time. I miss out on an opportunity to appreciate what I had just done in that moment that I am aware of that success. So once I realize that success, and by definition, the word appreciates means to be aware of the full worth of something, or to recognize the full worth of something. Mm-hmm. And so when I am met with a success, which I'm so grateful for, I take a moment. I looked up what a moment was classified as, and it's about 90 seconds. So even if it's just 90 seconds of just pausing and being like, wow, yeah, I literally just focused my time and energy for the last however long into this goal, and now it's here. I appreciate it, and then I move past it. So, I would say I appreciate it and I use it to fuel whatever it is I'm working on next. Yeah.
And that's how you handle success. Let's talk about Matt.
Yeah. And Matt's awesome, man.
He was on the podcast a couple episodes ago. Can you talk anything about your relationship with him / pour into him? I'm sure he doesn't know I'm asking you this, so it'll be a little treat for him. But.
Yeah, so Matt started working at the recovery room, I think it was like August of last year, like July of last year, something like that.
Yeah.
He had just finished up school, getting ready to start his personal training career. He had already started, but he was looking to continue to expand. And so we just had great conversation after, of course, talking about things that we needed to as it pertained to his role.
Yeah.
We would just sit and have conversations about life. We would talk about where he was, what he wanted to accomplish, and different ways that he could change what he was doing on a consistent basis to help him get where he wanted to be. I was excited for him when I found out he got his job at Lifetime, because he really wanted it. He was really excited about it, and I'm glad that everything has been going well for him. He's so ambitious and eager to learn, and just grateful for what he learns, that it was awesome talking to him and being around him on a consistent basis.
Yeah, he talked about obnoxious positivity, and I loved it. He's just been, because he told me the other day, I was telling him some success or whatever, and he just like stopped me, and he was like, he's like, you need to realize how many people are watching what you're doing, or like how many people, like, you're putting out good stuff. Like, I don't know, like for him to just say like stop with the negativity of necessary, or not, like he wasn't saying that, but it was like trying to make me realize like there are people who like what you are doing,
right?
Like, where you just get so caught up, or you're that negative bias that you just need to stop and say, I've done this thing, and people think it's this is great. What what's going on,
right?
So I don't know. I just wanted to have kind of like your thoughts on him, just because I don't know. I kind of leapfrog sometimes. It's been just kind of a cool building a little mini community of like, hey, I had this person on. What do you think of this person?
Yeah, I think it's great. It's awesome.
Right. That's life, I guess. Just
I mean, that's every day. That's how our minds operate. I think they just go any and everywhere.
Yeah.
So I like
ADHD. Where do you think we're at with mental health today? And if you want to relate it to physical health, you can.
I think it goes hand in hand. There's something that I believe about myself, but I believe that my inner world creates my outer world. So with that belief, it goes hand in hand with each other. I think sometimes it can be difficult to be aware of where you are mentally, because it takes being aware of it, right? Actually putting time and energy into thinking about it. And based on what I see a lot of, like social media, being on our phone so much, we don't stay in the present moment a lot. And since the present moment is all we have, it doesn't allow us to create an environment where mental health is consistently talked about and or made aware of for ourselves. So there are gaps that I think can be filled, but I'm excited that I have been meeting more people who are passionate about it, because it takes each and every one of those people who are aware of it and do have some sort of passion tied with it to continue to consistently have dialogue about it and to make content about it and put that content out so that more people, they have options. They can listen to a wide variety of people that they look up to, that may influence their day, who speak about mental health and how important it is, and how your life can completely change by just taking accountability for that area of your life.
Yeah, I think you're a good example of just putting your own thoughts into practice. Like, you kind of overcame a blood clot and, you're mentally in a better place, physically in a better place. You're the co-owner of the recovery room. Like, it seems like you're kind of going up and up and up. You prioritize the right things in your life.
Well,
Celebration. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. No, I really do appreciate that.
I mean, I don't want to tell you your life's good if you don't believe it, but it sounds like you believe that. Like, you're in a good place right now.
Well, yeah, I'm grateful for where I am.
Yeah.
I spend most of my time being aware of where I am, taking accountability for where I am, and appreciating where I am.
Yeah.
So since that's where I spend most of my energy, that's what I experience most.
Right.
So when I hear stuff like that, I'm just grateful that someone else is saying that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of other things that your mind could be thinking about, but it's thinking about me. Which, thank you. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah. Where do you want to go? Your success comes from being present, I think. But how do you also have aspirations that can motivate you externally? And, what are those, if you have any? Or are you just like, you know what, I'm not really even worried about it. I'm killing today. I'm dominating today.
Right. So I do set long-term goals. My ultimate goal with what I'm doing now, what I do with my podcast, with Balance Period.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later. It's to continue to expand, so to grow the number of people that listen, and to travel and train. That's what I turn to. Like, anytime I think about long term, is traveling and training. So it's getting up in front of people, speaking. Public speaking terrified me for so long that I realized it was something that I was supposed to do. So speaking in front of groups of people is definitely, it's something that I do now, but it is something that will continue to grow.
Yeah.
So it's just spreading the awareness that I have, the awareness that I've been blessed with as many people who are willing to listen and open to take accountability for where they are and appreciate what they have.
Podcast. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So podcast started in 2018.
Okay.
So it was March 2018.
Yeah.
It had already been a little over a year since the blood clot.
Okay.
I had been documenting my journey as best I could.
Yeah.
I had been doing that through various forms of social media, my journal, different things like that. And so I used the podcast as a platform to share the growth that I had experienced year over year.
Yeah.
So initially I called the episodes this time last year, and I would take all the stuff that I had and talk about it. Talk about where I was, talk about where I thought I was, talk about what I thought I was doing, and then talk about reality and what it actually turned into. Did that for probably like 3 or 4 months. I feel like every 4 months or so, I switch up how it looks.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much been the same. It's just been charting the progress and the growth that I experienced over time. And now I focus a lot more on habits. So I talk a lot about specific habits that are associated with mental health, with self-awareness, with self-care. And I talk about ways that people can incorporate these habits into their life.
Right.
Like today, if after you hear my podcast, you'll be able to change something small in your life that day. And over time, if you consistently do it, your life will improve.
Life and change comes in small changes. It's not a big one most of the time. There's big changes that, finding out you have a blood clot is a big change.
Yeah, that was a large one.
But one of my favorite quotes that I heard a little bit ago was the Back to the Future concept of if you go back, don't step on a butterfly, don't do anything tiny because it will have an impact on the history. But you don't think about that in the future.
Right.
Of making tiny choices now that will create a better future. For the most part, I feel like life is like that. And that's so cool that you're documenting it. That's kind of somewhat of what I wanted to do that for, each person that's on the podcast for me, you know, like they each get to document a little bit. Wrapping up a little life story gift present for the guest who's on the podcast, and here you go. And now you have an hour and a half of, you know, your story. So
yeah, and I think about, the fact that I do want to have children.
Yeah.
I figure they'll have kids. So one day my great-grandkids will be able to go back and listen to me talk. This is something that I was like, oh, it would be nice if my dad sat down and talked about his life and talked about how he was feeling mentally and emotionally and the things that he struggled with and the things that he overcame. And I was like, yeah, that would have been really valuable. Right. Why not make it for mine?
Why do you think we do this? Like, because podcasts are becoming more and more popular, but you kind of see it growing as blogging is also getting bigger. Like, just the sharing of ideas and feelings and experiences. Like, why do you think as a generation, people are going that way?
Sometimes what we do on a daily basis doesn't scratch our itch, right? It doesn't feed into what we're passionate about.
Preach. And
doing things like podcasting or blogging gives us an outlet, gives us a way to express what we are feeling. Of course, sometimes the reason behind it is, wanting to get famous or whatever. Very, very egotistical reasons sometimes. And even if that is the case, I think over time that person will realize, right, that it was a lot more valuable for other reasons than just what they gained from it. I know for me, it started that way too, right? Like, yes, it was just me charting in. I wanted to share it, but I was also really focused on how many people were listening, and I wanted to increase that as much as I could. I wanted to try to monetize it as best I could. Yeah. And then I realized that once I started to shift my perspective for the reason why I did it from what I would receive to what am I able to give? What am I able to give each and every time I post one of these episodes? Can I have a better delivery? What can I learn to improve what each listener receives from the episode? So I think that's something that comes over time and is definitely from person to person. But I think it's an outlet. It's a way for us to express who we really are, coming from a generation of people that probably didn't feel too heard by their parents, by society. Yeah. I learned that because I learned more about communication, and I didn't know how to communicate with people and to build rapport and to truly help other people feel like they're being understood. So I think podcasting and blogging and different things like that, even social media, give some people the platform where they feel they can do that, which I think is great. Yeah.
It's so hard not to sound like old when I talk about, social media and blogging. And, like, being 26, I just feel like I feel connected and I feel like I'm able to talk about it, but I also feel old when I'm talking about it. But it's like 26 not old,
Not at all. Very young. I'm 26 too, so it's like very young. Yeah.
People, whether they're 19 or 35 or 75, people deal with being lonely and rejection and success and dreams. And almost every person who has a beating heart deals with those things. They're just going to look a little bit different with the circumstances that surround it maybe. But, a lot of those things are sometimes universal, but just felt in different ways.
No, I agree. And that's why I'm grateful to be aware of what I'm aware of now and grateful to have a platform to speak about different emotional topics. Right. One of the episodes that I put out recently was about judgment and curiosity. So talking about the differences between those and how when we approach situations from a place of judgment, we're not able to be aware of those nuances that you just mentioned, right? We're not aware of the fact that, yes, this person is experiencing something and feeling something that is just like what I felt. It just looks a little different because they came from somewhere different. You're not able to make that connection because you're judging that person, that what they're doing is either right or wrong or good or bad. This is their path, and this is how they have experienced this emotion. And if we look at it from a perspective of being more curious, just wanting to understand and to learn more about the people that we interact with on a daily basis, how many more people's lives can we touch in a positive way? If that's what we focus on when we're talking to anyone. Personally, I've noticed that number rises.
Yeah, right.
For sure.
All right, so now I want to get into the final 5.
Okay.
Number 1, an embarrassing story.
One, though, I will talk about is the time I pooped myself. Because that is embarrassing, and it's something that, hey, it happens. Freshman in high school.
Yeah.
And I had the bubble guts, man. I don't know what I had eaten. I don't know what, but it was hot. It was just hot from like my stomach down. And I was probably in homeroom or something, but my teacher wouldn't let me go to the bathroom and was like, hey, you can go during passing period.
Yeah.
And so probably had like 20 minutes till passing period. And I'm just like, nah, whatever I'm feeling right now is going to come out soon. And so I tried to relieve some of the pressure by just like letting out a little, a little, and a little bit more came out than that.
Yeah.
So I made it to the bathroom at the passing period, let out everything else, but then my underwear were ruined. I pulled them off and just threw them in the garbage.
Yeah.
Went back to class. Yeah, and then...
Welcome to high school.
I know, man. Like, I was already small and insecure.
Yeah.
And it did not help that I pooped my pants middle of the day.
My day one of high school, they were passing back the syllabus. I had my headphones in, and I sneezed, and I farted at the same time. But I'm like, I couldn't hear it. My headphones are in. And I look up, and the whole class is looking at me, just bursting laughing. Day one of high school.
That's awesome. I mean, hey, only goes up from there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Another one, I tried to hit on a girl when I tripped up the stairs. I tripped up the stairs, and then some girl was like walking alongside me, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "Oh, that happens to me all the time." And I was like, "Is she into me?" I just didn't know what to do.
This is
Please
love.
come back. Yeah, this is love. I love you, Patrick Starr. What is your favorite part about yourself?
My ability to maintain a present perspective on life. That's been something that once I was aware of the value that it could add, I just worked diligently to cultivate, and that's the only part I have. So
2020 goals.
So continuing to travel.
Where do you want to travel?
So let's see, there's a few places that I have left. I've been to LA already this year, but I want to go to Colorado.
Okay. Denver or just anywhere?
Just anywhere. I'm down to go to Denver, but I hadn't looked too deep into exactly where yet.
Yeah.
I'll say Miami.
Okay.
New York, and then I actually am planning a trip to San Antonio now. So definitely those 4 places.
Yeah.
And then anywhere else that kind of pops up. I'm always down to go on a impromptu trip. So
yeah, Antarctica. There you go.
You know, I would be. Well, in doing cryotherapy, I'm good with like 3 minutes of cold. I don't know. Like, my hands get cold.
Yeah.
My fingers turn white. I don't know how effective I would be in Antarctica. But it would be an interesting story to tell.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Any other goals?
Any other goals? Yeah, I want to do more public speaking. So just being up in front of crowds of people and speaking about whatever it is they want to hear that day.
What's your motto or catchphrase you have?
Nothing is everything. Simple and to the point. Nothing is everything.
Dang.
That is what I turn to when I feel overwhelmed in the moment, when I am faced with things that produce frustration or anger. Nothing is everything. It reminds me that regardless of what I'm experiencing, I have the opportunity to look at it from a perspective that cultivates joy and happiness.
Proudest moment?
So it's still happening, which is awesome. Probably I would say maybe end of November, early December of last year. I had come to the realization that I was consistently aware of inconsistency in my life, and I realized that I was like throwing it on other people. I was like, this is inconsistent, that is inconsistent. And I finally took time to look within and be like, hey, if everything else around you is being inconsistent, what can you do to help change that? And all I can do is be an example. So I started to consistently post stories in the morning that were geared toward whatever I was feeling or what I was observing.
Yeah.
But they were put there to help people become more aware, more self-aware. It's there to help people learn how to take accountability for things and just appreciating life as a whole. I've consistently done that every day. It went from my own personal story to then putting it into what Balanced Period is now. So I say it's daily messages that promote awareness, accountability, and the appreciation of life. And every day you'll see something posted on there. So consistently doing that on a daily basis is definitely the proudest moment.
Now what we're going to do, this is the very, very, very last part. You're
Okay.
going to pick a person, significant other, brother, sister, family member, anyone you want. But you're going to like shout them out and pour into them.
I'll say my girlfriend for sure. Shout her out, Kelly Hanley. She's amazing. I met her a little over a year ago, and my life has done nothing but improved since I've met her. She balances me out. She's strong, she's beautiful, she's very intelligent. I wouldn't want to take on this life with anyone else. So the feelings that I have when I'm with her, they're definitely unmatched, which I think is awesome. I appreciate her so much. I try to tell her that as often as I can. So it's normally multiple times a day. But yeah, I'm just grateful to have her in my life.
All right, dude, plug as much as stuff as where can people find you, talk about
Yeah.
recovery room, all that jazz.
Perfect. So yeah, if you are interested in trying cryotherapy or any other service that will help you feel better faster, you can come to the recovery room. You can find us on Instagram at Recovery Room USA. That's also our Twitter handle and Facebook. You can pretty much find us anywhere under that handle. You can also go to our website, www.recoveryroomusa.com, to find out more about the exact services that we have to offer. For more on what I do on a day-to-day basis, you can follow me on Instagram. My handle is at recovery.ray. I also tweet quite a bit, so you can follow me on Twitter too. My handle is at mywordis_law. And finally, for Balanced Period, for the podcast, you can find that anywhere that there are podcasts available. So Apple, Spotify, Google Podcast. It's just called the Balanced Period Podcast. So you can search it. Or on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, our handle is at the Balanced Period. As I mentioned before, if you are following the Instagram page every day, there's something for you to help you be more aware, to take accountability for where you are, and to ultimately appreciate who you are, where you are, and what you are.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I enjoy myself.
Bye, guys.
Peace.
Hey everybody, this is Ryan from the Classic Buffalo Podcast. Wanted to take a second to talk about Anchor, how I'm actually making this podcast happen. Super happy that I'm partnering with them. So, Anchor is actually the easiest way to make a podcast. I've done my research. This is basically the best way. I promise. It's going to give you everything you need in one place for free, which is the best part. It's going to have tools, so you don't really need a fancy schmancy recording guy. Anchor's going to be helping you out there, and then they're going to distribute the podcast everywhere to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, everything. And then you can also make money with basically no minimum listenership, which is kind of rare. So hop on Anchor as soon as you can. Thanks. And that is an episode of Classic Buffalo. Congrats, you've made it to the very end, where we will talk a little bit about Raymond. We will talk about some thoughts that I had and just kind of debrief. A couple thoughts here. So Raymond man, the guy just exudes confidence. The guy sitting across from the table, not only was it awesome to be in what I hope would be our studio once all of this is gone, or, not gone, but once we're able to just be somewhat closer to normalcy and able to go to different places and be in a studio. That was like my first episode in that. Loved the audio quality, loved having a place for people to meet up. And so that's like it was kind of a cool thing, knowing that's somewhat of the future. And that was kind of a cool thing. So I'm glad to have had Raymond to be a part of that. But so sitting in front of this guy who just exudes confidence, and knowing just not only that, but like the calmness, and like that he just seems like he just has it all figured out, which, none of us do. But I think, he's done such a good job in not only the mental and the physical game. He's a very physically fit guy, but he's also able to be present in the moment and like to consistently like be in these 90-second moments, right? Just consistently being mindful and mindful and mindful. And that leads to success. And being able to be grateful for looking back and not judging yourself of, man, a year ago or 6 months ago, I was not doing this or that. And then it reminded me, I was actually talking with Alex McKinley, who actually will be on a future episode. But she knows Ray, she knows Raymond, she knows Jordan Burns, she knows a bunch of other people. Like, it's kind of, like I've mentioned in this episode, we're lily pad, we're hopping. Like, oh, and this person and this person. That's pretty common if you've made it to this point of the podcast that we do that. So I was talking with her and was just talking about how, I have all these goals, right? And I want to be better. I want to have this. I want to do this. And she just was like, look back at where you were. How long have you been on this journey? And I was like, a year? And she's like, yeah, like, look at how much you've changed and all these other things. And like, yeah, you've got more to go, but like, look at how far you've come. And that reminded me of just of Raymond's ability to look back and consistently being reflecting through his podcast. Please go check that out also. But it just connecting those two things of like looking back at and reflecting, which Raymond mentioned, about what you've gone through. What have you talked about? What have you experienced? What are your negative thought patterns? What are these things in your life? And just look back. Where do you want to go to? Like being able to kind of, gracefully weave between your past, present, and future, and spending the appropriate amount of time in all of those, dealing with trauma in the past, acknowledging and being grateful of the things that have been given to you, being present, feeling the grounding, listening to the birds, breathing the air, focusing on your breathing when you're having a panic attack, acknowledging how your body feels, listening to yourself, going into the future, thinking about your year plan, your 5-year plan. What are things that you'd love to do? And then what steps can you take today to get there? And, Raymond's just a champion of mindfulness, champion of a lot of different things. And also just bonding over, both pretty much shitting our pants. That was just funny. I wanted to keep that in there. We could have, obviously we can cut whatever we want. We could say whatever we want, but just a real human moment between the two boys, just sharing some podcast and sharing some life. So if you'd like to be like Raymond, if you'd like to be a cool dude, cool gal, cool person, and be on, maybe dogs. I need to interview a dog. If you're a dog, woof woof, would you like to be on the podcast? Here, hop on, hit Instagram, and then we'll get you on. But yeah, if you'd like to be on this podcast, it's free. No strings attached. Would love to have you on here. Kind of doing an interesting things as far as next steps. Like I've mentioned in the intro, we're doing the Discord. I'm really passionate about getting a physical community or getting a community, and because I think that's like boots on the ground, how we start making some damage in a good way for mental health. I'm really passionate and hoping this kind of works out. And if some of you like can't meet up on a Tuesday, like as far as like being on the audio call or the video call, if you can't do Tuesday, we can pick another day. Or if there's a lot of you guys, we can do Tuesdays and Thursdays or Wednesdays or Fridays. Like, we're flexible. I'm just trying to figure out what days are most of you guys free, give you a space for an hour and a half to kind of share what's been going on in your life, because that's what group therapy is. Like, at least in what I've seen as being successful, is you just go and you go in a circle and you share if you want, but most people at least just check in and say, hey, I'm doing all right. I'm actually good. I don't really need to share today. Or like, yeah, I'd love to process something. I got this thing going on with my stepdad, or I'm having tough at my job, and I process. And then you kind of share what's going on. You go in a circle, and then people are like, oh, this is what I would do. Or like, I'm really sorry, that's difficult. All people have different support styles, right? But it's just so effective. And that's my whole motto, is like making this thing digestible. Like, we don't need to make this like so medical that, you know, it's scary, right? It's just, we're hanging out, and it's a safe space for you guys. So if you'd like to attend that, or like this appeals to you, but the day or the time doesn't work, please let me know that, so I can kind of just take notes and adjust accordingly. There's a couple of organizations in the mental health community that I'm like reaching out to just kind of contact and get their thoughts on the industry. Maybe even have somebody on the podcast. That would be dope. But I'm trying to do that, just again, like taking the thermometer of like, what are the things out right now? What are the skills? What are the tools right now? Like teletherapy, go to the hospital, there's organizations, there's workshops. Like, I'm trying to just figure out what's going on right now. Where are the holes in care? What are people like passionate about? And kind of what could Classic Buffalo do? How can we fit into this, you know? So I'm trying to figure all that out, and I've actually got a scheduled call this Friday with someone who's on the board of one of the biggest, at least in the indie chapter of mental health communities. So I'm pumped about that. And I might start just reaching out to like individual counselors and just get their thoughts on mental health too. So we'll see how it goes, folks. Could also be seeing a break coming up in the next couple of weeks. You know, I've been doing all these episodes at least one a week, and, you know, I don't plan on quitting this forever, but, you know, also in that same conversation with Alex, you know, I talked about, I take her feedback very seriously, just because, you know, like, I respect her. She's another person that I'm a little bit closer with her than I am with Raymond, but I feel like they'd give me somewhat the same advice of, you know, Alex and I we talked about like just taking a break and, you know, just and pursuing things that I enjoy, and, you know, taking a step back from both this and vintage indie appeals to me in the sense of just like being free from like, oh, that's the Classic Buffalo guy, or that's the vintage indie guy, and like trying to get back to my roots of just doing things I enjoy, and getting the love back for doing some of these things. And maybe that's kind of gone away, so that might be coming in the future at some point. Just take a vacation from my side businesses that are this podcast and vintage indie. Just, it's tiring, you know, sometimes, but I don't think it's gonna go away completely, so no worries on that front. But until next time, we'll have another episode next week, I know that for sure. But it's been your boy Ryan, and we'll talk soon. Bye.